What happens when Hollywood's most outspoken star meets television's most relentless interrogator? What followed was one of the most explosive moments ever captured on live morning television. Mark Wahlberg walked into the Good Morning America studio, expecting a routine promotional interview for his latest action thriller. Instead, he found George Stephanopoulos in full prosecutor mode, armed with questions that had nothing to do with movies and everything to do with controversy. "Mark, welcome back to Good Morning America." Stephanopoulos greeted him with a polite smile that never quite reached his eyes. The camera caught Wahlberg settling into the guest chair, his confident demeanor intact, but his posture betraying a hint of unease. "Thanks for having me, George. Always good to be here," Wahlberg replied, adjusting his jacket and flashing that familiar Boston charm that had carried him through countless interviews. But Stephanopoulos wasn't in the mood for small talk. Leaning forward, his tone sharpened. "Let's talk about your past, Mark. Specifically, the incidents from your youth that some people say you've never fully addressed." The change in Wahlberg's expression was immediate. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowed. This wasn't going to be about his new movie, his family, or his fitness routine. This was an ambush. "George, I thought we were here to talk about my new film," Wahlberg said, his voice controlled but edged with irritation. "I've addressed those issues from my past many times. I was a kid who made terrible mistakes, and I've spent my entire adult life trying to make amends." Stephanopoulos flipped through his notes, his tone cool and deliberate. "But Mark, don't you think saying you've addressed them isn't enough? These weren't just teenage pranks. These were serious incidents that hurt real people. Doesn't the public deserve more than a rehearsed apology tour?" The tension in the studio was unmistakable. Camera operators exchanged uneasy glances. Producers fidgeted in the background. Live television was spiraling fast. Wahlberg's hands gripped the arms of his chair. "George, with all due respect, I've been open about my mistakes for decades. I've worked with victims, supported community programs, and spent every day trying to be better than I was as a stupid kid." "What exactly are you looking for here?" "I'm looking for accountability," Stephanopoulos shot back. "Real accountability, not the polished version you offer at press junkets. These weren't mistakes, Mark. They were crimes. And some people believe Hollywood let you sweep them under the rug because you became a movie star." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Wahlberg's composure cracked. The street toughness from Dorchester flickered through the Hollywood exterior. "Sweep them under the rug?" Wahlberg's voice rose, his Boston accent growing sharper. "I've never hidden from what I did. I was 17, high out of my mind, and I did terrible things. But I served my time. I changed my life. I've spent 30 years proving I'm not that person anymore. What more do you want from me?" Sensing blood in the water, Stephanopoulos pressed harder. "But Mark, serving 45 days in jail, some say that's hardly justice. Now you're worth hundreds of millions, living in a mansion, while your victims still deal with the trauma you caused. How do you reconcile that?" The blow landed. Wahlberg's face cycled through anger, disbelief, and barely contained rage. Every emotion was broadcast in real time to millions of viewers. "You know what, George?" Wahlberg said, his voice suddenly low and dangerous. "I came here in good faith to talk about a movie that employs hundreds of people and entertains millions. And you want to put me on trial for things I did as a teenager, things I've apologized for, things I've tried to make right in every way I can." Stephanopoulos leaned back with the satisfied look of a prosecutor who'd just cornered his witness. "But Mark, shouldn't public figures be held to a higher standard? Shouldn't there be ongoing consequences for serious crimes, even years later? Your victims don't get to just move on, so why should you?" That was the breaking point. Wahlberg shot up from his chair so fast it rolled backward, the sudden movement freezing everyone on set. His face was red, veins visible, fists clenched. "Are you out of your mind?" he shouted, his voice echoing through the studio. Higher standard? I've been holding myself to the highest standard for 30 years. I've donated millions, worked with at-risk kids, and tried to be a role model for people who came from where I came from. Stephanopoulos stayed seated, visibly tense but unwilling to back down. But Mark, he pressed, donations and charity work. Aren't those just ways to buy your way out of accountability? Money doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't heal the trauma or give those people back what you took. What I took from them? Wahlberg's voice cracked with incredulous rage. George, I was a strung-out kid from a broken home. I was 17, addicted to cocaine, living on the streets half the time. You think I had some master plan to hurt people? You think I wasn't hurting just as much as anyone else? The morning show host saw his opening and went for the kill. But Mark, that's exactly the problem. You're still making excuses. You're still playing the victim. Your childhood, your addiction, your circumstances, none of that changes what you did to innocent people. And honestly, listening to you blame everything except yourself makes me wonder if you've really changed at all. The accusation hit Wahlberg like a physical blow. His face went from red to white in seconds, and for a moment, he looked genuinely stunned. The suggestion that he hadn't truly changed, that his entire adult life had been meaningless, cut deeper than anything Stephanopoulos had said before. You wonder if I've changed? Wahlberg's voice dropped to a near whisper, somehow more dangerous than when he'd been shouting. George, do you have any idea what I've gone through to become the man I am today? Do you know what it's like to wake up every single day knowing you hurt people when you were at your lowest point? Stephanopoulos sensed he'd struck a nerve and pressed harder. Then tell us, Mark. Tell us what it's really like. Stop giving us the sanitized Hollywood version and tell America what you truly think about what you did. You want the real version? Wahlberg began pacing behind his chair, his body radiating raw, volatile energy that made everyone in the studio tense. Fine, here's the real version. I was 17 years old, completely messed up on drugs, angry at the world, and I did something unforgivable. I attacked innocent people because I was too high, too stupid, and too angry to think about anyone but myself. The confession seemed to catch Stephanopoulos off guard. He'd expected more denial, not this raw honesty. But Wahlberg wasn't finished. You know what the worst part is, George? It's not the jail time. It's not the public shame. It's not even the damage to my career. The worst part is knowing there are people out there who still carry scars from what I did. Physical scars, emotional scars, the kind that never fully heal. And no amount of money, no amount of apologies, no amount of good works will ever erase that. For a moment, the studio fell silent. Even Stephanopoulos seemed momentarily disarmed by the vulnerability in Wahlberg's words. But the moment didn't last. Then why, Mark? Stephanopoulos pressed on. Why haven't you reached out directly to your victims? Why not make personal amends instead of relying on charity work and interviews? Something in Wahlberg's demeanor shifted. The openness vanished, replaced by cold fury. Because, George, he said, each word slow and deliberate. My lawyers, my publicists, my agents, and everyone else who gets paid to protect me from people like you have spent decades telling me that reaching out directly could open me up to lawsuits, harassment, and exploitation from people who want to profit off my guilt. Stephanopoulos pounced. So you're saying your team has stopped you from making real amends? That Hollywood has protected you from facing full accountability? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. Wahlberg slammed his hand down on the arm of his chair, the sound echoing through the studio like a gunshot. I'm saying that in a world where everything turns into a lawsuit or a media circus, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for the people you've hurt is leave them alone. The host leaned forward, sensing he had his guest cornered. This was the kind of explosive television that would trend for weeks. And Stephanopoulos was clearly savoring every second. But Mark, he challenged, doesn't that just sound like another excuse? Another way of avoiding real accountability? You're basically saying your comfort and legal safety matter more than your victim's need for closure. Wahlberg's expression hardened into pure rage. When he spoke, his voice was low, tight, and dangerous. "My comfort?" he said, stepping toward Stephanopoulos' desk. "George, you have no idea what you're talking about." Security guards around the studio began moving closer, ready to step in if things escalated further. Wahlberg noticed and let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "Oh, this is rich, George. Now you've got security ready to throw me out, because I'm telling you the truth about how messed up this all is." He glared across the desk. "You want to talk about comfort? Comfort would be never having to think about the worst day of my life again. Comfort would be being able to sleep through the night without wondering if I've done enough to make up for what I did as a broken, angry teenager." Stephanopoulos didn't flinch. The tension in the studio was suffocating, but he pressed on, fueled by instinct and adrenaline. The confrontation had gone far beyond a morning show interview. It was now a battle of will, truth, and pride, live on national television. "But Mark, that's exactly my point. You're still making this about your feelings, your guilt, your sleepless nights. What about their sleepless nights? Their trauma? Why should anyone care about your comfort when you're the one who caused all this pain in the first place?" That question pushed Wahlberg past his breaking point. He began pacing around the studio like a caged animal, his hands gesturing wildly as his voice rose and fell with emotion. "You know what, George? You're absolutely right. Nobody should care about my comfort. Nobody should care about my feelings. And you know what else? Nobody should have to sit here and listen to some privileged talking head who's never made a real mistake in his entire sanitized life lecture me about accountability." The insult landed. Stephanopoulos' composed expression cracked slightly, his tone sharpening. "Privileged talking head? Mark, I'm not the one who committed violent crimes and then became a millionaire movie star. I'm not the one who spent decades avoiding real consequences for serious actions. And I'm certainly not the one having a public meltdown on live television because someone asked me tough questions." Tough questions? Wahlberg spun to face him directly, his body radiating aggression. "George, these aren't tough questions. This is a hit job. You brought me here under false pretenses, ambushed me with decades-old issues that have nothing to do with why I'm here. And now you're acting like some crusading journalist because you managed to get me angry." Stephanopoulos stood up, matching Wahlberg's posture. The two men faced each other across the studio, the tension so thick it was almost tangible. False pretenses? Mark, you're a public figure who committed serious crimes. That makes your past fair game for any interview, anywhere, anytime. If you can't handle being asked about it, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews at all." "Maybe I shouldn't," Wahlberg shot back. "Maybe I should just disappear from public life entirely, so people like you can't use my past mistakes to boost your ratings. Would that make you happy, George? Would that satisfy your need for justice?" Sensing that he'd pushed his guest to the limit, Stephanopoulos didn't pull back. He went for the final blow. "What would make me happy, Mark, is if you showed some real remorse instead of just anger. What would satisfy my need for justice is if you took full responsibility without making excuses or blaming everyone else. But clearly, that's never going to happen." The accusation that he hadn't shown real remorse broke Wahlberg's composure completely. His face twisted with rage as he moved toward Stephanopoulos' desk with clear intent. "Real remorse? You want to see real remorse, George? Every single day of my life is remorse. Every choice I make is shaped by the fact that I hurt people when I was 17. I can't take it back. I can't undo the pain. And I sure as hell can't satisfy people like you who use my guilt as entertainment." Security began moving in as production assistants frantically signaled to the control room. The situation was spiraling out of control. Stephanopoulos, realizing he might have gone too far, took a cautious step back, though his voice stayed firm. Mark, you need to calm down. This is a family show, and your behavior right now is inappropriate. If you can't control yourself, perhaps you should leave. Oh, now I need to leave. Wahlberg's laugh was harsh and bitter. Now that you've got your ratings moment, humiliated me on national television, now I need to leave. You're unbelievable, George. Absolutely unbelievable. Security, please escort Mr. Wahlberg from the studio, Stephanopoulos ordered. This interview is over. The words hit Wahlberg like a physical blow. He froze for a moment, processing what had just happened. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, cold, and far more dangerous than before. You know what, George? You got exactly what you wanted. Your viral moment, your controversy, your headlines. But here's something your research team probably missed. The person I hurt most all those years ago wasn't some random stranger. It was myself. And people like you make sure I never forget it. As security approached, Wahlberg tore off his microphone and tossed it onto the desk in disgust. Congratulations on your journalism, George. I'm sure you're very proud. With that, Mark Wahlberg walked off the Good Morning America set, leaving behind one of the most explosive moments in morning television history. The cameras kept rolling as Stephanopoulos tried to regain his composure and cut to commercial. But the damage was done. What was meant to be a routine movie promotion had turned into a media firestorm that would dominate headlines for weeks. What did you think of this explosive confrontation? Was Wahlberg justified in his anger, or did Stephanopoulos simply ask the tough questions that needed to be asked? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.